When we talk about creating our reality, we often think about what we want in our lives, more success, happiness, or fulfillment. But to truly understand how to make this happen, we need to look at something much deeper, our personality. Your personality, which is essentially your habitual way of thinking, feeling, and acting, plays a huge role in shaping your personal reality. Let's dive into how this works and how you can start transforming your life by changing your personality. When you think about it, our personality is like a set of programs running in the background of our lives. These programs are built from our past experiences, our beliefs, and our emotions. They guide how we interact with the world and how we respond to different situations. The problem is that many of these programs are outdated or based on past traumas and limitations. They're like a set of default settings that keep us stuck in the same patterns and prevent us from evolving. To create a new personal reality, we first need to recognize that our current personality is not set in stone. It's a collection of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that we have learned and adopted over time. The key here is to understand that if you want to change your life, you have to be willing to change your personality. This means altering your habitual thoughts, feelings, and actions. It requires you to become conscious of these patterns and work intentionally to replace them with new ones. The first step in this process is awareness. Start by observing your thoughts and emotions. Notice the automatic responses you have in different situations. For example, when something doesn't go your way, do you immediately feel frustrated or angry? Or do you find yourself falling back into old habits, like procrastinating or doubting yourself? This is the starting point. You need to see how your current personality is shaping your reality before you can begin to change it. Once you're aware of these patterns, you can start to dismantle them. This is where the real work begins. Our brains are wired to run on automatic pilot, relying on past experiences and habits to guide our responses. But when you decide to change, you're essentially reprogramming your brain. This involves becoming familiar with and questioning the habitual patterns that have been guiding you. Imagine you're starting a meditation practice. In the beginning, you might find it difficult to stay focused because your mind is used to jumping from one thought to another. You might notice that even though you're trying to meditate, your mind keeps dragging you back into old thought patterns, like worrying about work or rehashing past arguments. This is a sign that your brain is defaulting to its old programming. But this is where the magic happens. When you recognize these patterns and consciously redirect your focus, you're beginning to rewire your brain. Changing your personality is a process that requires both self-discipline and patience. It's not something that happens overnight. It takes time and consistent effort to shift from old habits and reactions to new ones. This journey involves deliberately choosing new thoughts and emotions rather than sticking with the old familiar ones that you might be used to. Let's break this down. Imagine you have a habit of reacting to stress with anxiety and worry. This reaction is something you've probably done many times, and it's become a default response. Your body and mind are used to this way of handling stress. Changing this reaction means you have to consciously choose a new way to respond. For example, instead of letting anxiety take over when you're stressed, you can practice responding with calmness and problem solving. This might involve taking deep breaths, stepping back to assess the situation, or thinking of practical solutions to the problem at hand. At first, this new response might feel unusual or awkward because you're not used to it, but that's okay. It's part of the process. Self-discipline comes into play because you need to consistently remind yourself to practice these new responses. It's easy to slip back into old habits, especially when you're under pressure. But every time you catch yourself reacting with anxiety, you have the chance to switch to your new response. Each time you choose calmness over anxiety, you strengthen the new neural pathways in your brain. Patience is also crucial. Changing deeply ingrained habits takes time. You won't see instant results, and there might be moments when it feels like your old reactions are winning out. During these times, it's important to be patient with yourself. Recognize that it's a process, and every small step you take is moving you closer to your goal. Think of it like learning a new skill. When you first start, you might not be very good at it, and you might make mistakes, but the more you practice, the better you get. The same applies to changing your personality. You're building new habits and neural pathways in your brain, and this takes consistent effort. Another important aspect is raising your energy levels. Your energy directly impacts your ability to change. If you're stuck in low energy states, like stress or frustration, it's harder to shift your thoughts and feelings. So it's crucial to work on elevating your energy. This can be achieved through practices like meditation, exercise, and positive affirmations. By increasing your energy, you create a more fertile ground for change. One powerful way to change your personality is through visualization. Visualization is a technique where you close your eyes and imagine yourself acting in new ways or achieving your goals. This practice is more than just daydreaming. It has a real impact on your brain and behavior. When you visualize, you create detailed images in your mind of what you want to achieve or how you want to behave. For example, if you want to be more confident, you might close your eyes and picture yourself speaking confidently in front of a crowd or handling a difficult situation with calm and assurance. The amazing thing is that your brain doesn't know the difference between real experiences and imagined ones. It processes both in a similar way. Think of it like this. When you vividly imagine yourself succeeding, your brain starts to create new pathways or circuits that support this vision. It's like wiring a new circuit board. These new pathways are not yet active, but as you keep visualizing, they become stronger and more connected. Over time, these pathways become a part of your brain's normal functioning. When you visualize often, you're basically training your brain to think and act in new ways. For example, if you visualize yourself being successful at a job interview, your brain starts to create the neural connections that align with this success. You begin to feel more confident, and you start behaving in ways that match your visualized success. This new way of thinking and behaving gradually becomes a part of your personality. Let's say you want to improve your public speaking skills. Every day you spend a few minutes visualizing yourself giving a great presentation. You imagine the positive reactions from the audience, the clear and confident way you speak, and the satisfaction of a job well done. Your brain starts to build circuits that support these visualizations. As a result, when you actually have to speak in public, you're more likely to feel and act confidently because your brain has been preparing you for it. This process doesn't just change how you think, it changes how you act. When the new circuits are fully formed, they start to influence your behavior in real life. You begin to naturally act in ways that align with your visualized goals. For example, if you're visualizing yourself as a better listener, you'll find that you're more present and attentive in conversations. This new behavior will start to become part of who you are. Think about it this way. If you imagine yourself being confident and successful, your brain starts to form new connections that support those qualities. You begin to think and act more confidently, which leads to new opportunities and experiences that reflect your new personality. This is how your inner world starts to shape your outer world. Your thoughts and feelings become the blueprint for your reality. It's also important to understand that changing your personality isn't about denying your past or pretending that everything is perfect. It's about acknowledging your current state and then intentionally creating a new state of being. This involves letting go of past limitations and embracing new possibilities. It's about transforming the energy you carry and shifting from a state of survival to a state of creation. In the state of survival, your body is constantly reacting to stress and perceived threats. This keeps you stuck in a cycle of fear and limitation. But when you shift to a state of creation, you move into a place of growth and possibility. You start to act from a place of love and trust rather than fear and doubt. This shift is crucial for creating a new personal reality. To make this shift, you need to be willing to face discomfort and challenge. It's not easy to break old habits and patterns, but it's necessary for transformation. When you're willing to push through the discomfort of change, you begin to liberate yourself from the constraints of your old personality. This liberation allows you to access new levels of joy, creativity, and fulfillment. Changing your personality involves more than just altering how you think and feel. It's also about embracing the power of choice. Every single moment in your life gives you a choice. You can either stick with your old patterns or create new ones. This might sound simple, but it's a crucial part of transforming your life. Think about it. Every day, you're faced with choices, big and small. These choices can reinforce the old habits and reactions you've had for years, or they can help you build new ways of thinking and behaving. When you start paying attention to these choices, you realize that you have more control over your life than you might have thought. For example, let's say you have a habit of getting frustrated when things don't go as planned. This frustration might be a part of your old personality. When something goes wrong, you might automatically react with anger or stress. But now you have a choice. Instead of reacting with frustration, you can choose to respond with calmness or problem solving. This small shift in how you react can start to change your personality over time. Making these new choices consciously is key. When you become aware of your automatic reactions, you can start making different choices that align with the new personality you want to develop. This means you're actively participating in creating your reality. You're not just going through the motions of life, but intentionally shaping how you experience the world. Imagine you're in a difficult situation at work. Your old pattern might be to react defensively or get overwhelmed. But if you choose to stay calm and think clearly, you're practicing a new way of being. Over time, these choices become more natural, and you start to develop a new personality that handles challenges in a healthier way. Being an active creator of your life means you're taking charge of how you respond to different situations. Instead of letting old patterns control you, you're making decisions that reflect your desired changes. This shift from being a passive observer to an active participant is powerful. It means you're no longer letting life happen to you. You're shaping how it unfolds. Every choice you make, no matter how small, contributes to the development of your new personality. It might be choosing to respond with kindness instead of irritation, or deciding to take positive action instead of procrastinating. These choices add up and create a new reality for you. As you continue on this journey, know that transformation is an ongoing process. There will be moments when you slip back into old patterns, and that's okay. What's important is that you recognize these moments and use them as opportunities to learn and grow. Each time you catch yourself falling back into old habits, you have the chance to redirect your focus and reinforce your new patterns. Over time, as you consistently practice these new patterns, they become ingrained in your brain and body. Your personality starts to shift, and with it, your personal reality begins to change. You'll notice new opportunities, relationships, and experiences aligning with your new way of being. A neurological, a genetic, a chemical death of the old self. And this dark night of the soul, this unfamiliar place, is the true value, the true step towards developing a new self. So then if we're leaving the old and we are creating the new, then the next most important question is, well, if I'm going to create a new self, what thoughts do I want to think? What behaviors can I plan? And as you begin to image and rehearse a new way of being, you are changing your brain and body neurologically and biologically. That's the neuroscientific model of mental rehearsal. And as we begin to remind ourselves who we no longer want to be, and we remind ourselves every day of who we do want to be, there'll come a moment where we begin to silence the circuits in our brain that are connected to the old self and inhibit the chemicals that reaffirm the same identity, and then begin to fire and wire new circuits in our brain that begins to install the neurological hardware. The knowledge creates awareness. Awareness creates consciousness. Consciousness and energy are connected, so there's a change in energy globally going on with the world. Now that knowledge and that change of energy has effects on paradigms that are no longer a vibrational match with that new level of consciousness. This is the time we've been waiting for. This is where it's happening in the Milky Way. This is happening here because there's a true coming of a new consciousness. It's not one person that's coming. It's a collective consciousness that's emerging. If you look around the world right now, whether you're looking at the economic model or the political model, or even certain aspects of the religious model, the environment, the medical model, there's several different parts of our culture that's beginning to collapse. If you study human nature historically, we always wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis, both as an individual and as a culture, before we decide to change. If you look at this and you study it in history, it's a sign that something new has to be born. As the old model of reality begins to change, something else has to replace it. So we have two ways that we actually face crisis. We can either face crisis in a state of emergency, which in the beginning of a crisis is healthy, or we can face crisis in a state of creativity and innovation. If you're addressing a financial crisis or a crisis in a culture and everybody is selfish and everybody's living by those emotions, then they're pushing their way to get to the head of the line. They're competing. They're forcing outcomes. They're using very primitive systems to try to take care of themselves. We know from the physiology of the brain that most of the blood supply goes to the hindbrain and away from the forebrain. Those chemicals create a gap between the way things appear in our life and the way things really are. In other words, we're viewing reality in an altered state. We don't see possibility. We feel separate from each other. We are competing and striving to get to the head of the line by using our cunning, manipulative, egocentric ways to get there, and we're very controllable. Fear is very controllable. Competition is very controllable. Anger and war divides individuals. Now that is not a way to address a crisis, because the service to self or taking care of the self is the exact thing that enhances the crisis. Because if you and I are all doing the same, if we're all doing the same thing, then a culture becomes more divided. It becomes more disintegrated. It becomes more incoherent. And possibility then is not part of the equation. So the other state of mind, if you can view crisis as a great opportunity brilliantly disguised as an impossible situation, and you have to match the conditions in your environment with a new mind, now we're talking about greatness. Because innovation and creativity and a new way of thinking and a new way of being means that we can't do the same thing from the past. And so in history, cultures that are individuals that overcame their environmental conditions were considered mystics and saints and leaders and charismatic leaders. They were individuals that saw past the illusion of the present reality. When we begin to become innovative or creative, the brain begins to switch. We begin to turn on the forebrain, the frontal lobe, which is really the crowning achievement of the human being, and we begin to ask bigger questions. How can we create a new way of being in a world that's falling apart? How can we begin to create a new system to adapt to these conditions? And I think that people, when they begin to feel empowered by possibility, when they begin to see that the death of the old paradigms means the beginning of a new paradigm, how many people actually believe in the idea that the way you think has some effect on your life? So how many people actually woke up this morning and consciously created a future? You know, the biggest reason why people don't do it is because you don't really believe it's true. You see, If you knew on a gut level that it was absolutely true, would you ever miss a day, and would you ever let any thought slip by your awareness that you didn't want to experience? So your brain, according to neuroscience, is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. Your brain is a record of your environment. It's a record, an artifact of your past. So if you believe this, then does your environment control your thinking, or does your thinking control your environment? So if you wake up in the morning and you get out of bed on the same exact side as you did the day before, you shut the alarm clock off with the same finger, you slip into your favorite slippers, you shuffle into the bathroom and you use the toilet like you always do, then you walk over to the mirror and you look at yourself to remember who you are, then you get into the shower and you wash yourself in the same routine way, then you groom yourself to look like everybody expects you to look, then you go downstairs and you drink coffee out of your favorite mug, then you drive to work the same way as you did the day before. You see the same people that push the same emotional buttons. You do the exact thing that you know how to do and you memorize and can do so well that you're an expert at. Then you hurry up and rush home so you can hurry up and check your emails, so you can hurry up and go to bed, so you can hurry up and do it all over again. Now here's my question. Did your brain change at all that day? We could say that you were thinking the same thoughts, performing the same actions that create the same experiences, that produce the same emotions, but secretly expecting something to change in your life. So then, as the environment turns on different circuits in your brain, you begin to think equal to your environment. As you see the same people and go to the same places and do the same things at the same time, it's the external environment that's turning on different circuits in your brain, causing you to think equal to everything that you know. And as long as you think equal to everything that's familiar or known to you, what do you keep creating more of? Same life. Same laws still applying to you. You're just thinking equal to everything that you know, and you keep creating more of the same. To change, to truly change, is to think greater than your environment. And every great person in history knew this. Whether it was William Wallace, or Mahatma Gandhi, or Martin Luther King, or Queen Elizabeth I, or Joan of Arc, they all had a vision. They all had an idea, couldn't see it, couldn't smell it, couldn't taste it, couldn't feel it. It was alive in their mind. It was so alive in their mind that they began to live as if that reality was actually happening now. So, can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the event has already happened? Neuroscience says it's absolutely possible. Now, your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. It's that simple. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So the present personality who's sitting here today, you, has created the present personal reality called your life. The hardest part of all of this, everything we're talking about, is one simple thing: making the time to do it. That's it. Making the time for your precious self to eliminate the people in your life and the things that you do just for a short period of time when you wake up in the morning or before you go to bed at night, and you say, okay, what is the greatest ideal of myself that I want to be today? But listen, I'm not going to get up until I am this person. When you begin to wrestle with your limitations and overcome them, there's so much talk in the United States about self-love. People think self-love is getting a manicure or buying a sports car. That's not self-love, that's pleasure. Self-love is when you're sitting with yourself and you are working on overcoming your hardwired thoughts or beliefs or your emotional propensities that are connected to your past, and you are really working to overcome them. Right on the other side of your pain is freedom. Right on the other side of your fear is courage. Right on the other side of your sadness is joy. It's the same energy, it's just trapped in the body. When you stretch yourself past that point and you break free from the chains of those emotional addictions, the side effect of that is called joy. The body is liberated from that level of mind. When that happens, there's available energy to create with. So when you break through that, you begin to love yourself. You begin to respect yourself, and you begin to love and respect others because you see yourself in them. And now that you're free from it, you can understand them with compassion without knee-jerking in the same way. So the difficulty here is really making the time to do it. And if you began to think about a new way of being and you moved into a state where you said, I'm not going to get up until I am this person. Not only did you memorize it neurologically in your brain, but you allowed the thoughts that you were thinking to become the experience, to the point that your body as the unconscious mind began to live in that future reality in the present moment. And when you got up, when mind and body were working together in that state of being, and you said, I'm going to maintain the state of being my entire day, and I don't care. Bring on the challenges because I want to test my greatness. And you did that the entire day. The end of your day, when you finished your day, more than likely you'd have more energy than when you started. The literal translation of the word meditation in Tibetan means to become familiar with. The symbol means to become familiar with. So if you're becoming conscious of or familiar with your unconscious self to the point you're so conscious of your unconscious thoughts, so familiar with your unconscious habits, and so aware of your emotions that you would never let them go by unnoticed by you. There's no chance for you to return back to the old self, to know thyself. And then if you became familiar with a new self because you neurologically fired and wired it in your brain and you emotionally conditioned your body and you were able to do it enough times, sooner or later it would get easier and it would become more familiar to you and you would be able to move into that state of being. By the way, a new state of being is a new personality, and a new personality is a new personal reality. One of the things about substances is that it actually helps to change chemistry in the brain and body, so there becomes a chemical dependence on it at that point. But the person who wants to change has to want to change. That's the first element. In other words, no one can make you change, but you have to find it in you to really see if this is what you want to do. I've studied people over the last 12 years. Why is it that one person, an old-timer, can look at his x-rays and see a spot on his lungs, and the doctor will say to him, hey George, you know that's a spot on your lungs. It's nothing now, but if you keep smoking, it will be. And that guy just takes his cigarettes, throws them in the trash, and he's done the next day. How do you explain that? He made the decision, and the decision was an experience, and it began to rewrite his chemistry and his biology. How can a person who moves into a state of religious ecstasy, a state of absolute faith, drink strychnine and not get poisoned by it? It's a decision. It's an energetic decision. It's how powerful the mind really is. People then who actually want to make the decision to change have to make the decision with firm intention. Once you understand the how-to, that you can't use your conscious mind to do this, you have to move beyond the analytical mind. When you understand brainwave patterns, and when you slip into a different state of mind, that it's easier to do it. So most people then, 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a set of memorized habits and behaviors that become part of our identity or personality. So 5% of the conscious mind is trying to change 95% of what we've memorized, hardwired, become addicted to emotionally. So the person may want to think positively, but they've been feeling negatively and oiling those programs for the last 25 years. They might want a new life with new conditions, and as they use their mind, conscious mind, to focus on that, their subconscious mind, they've been programmed to feel guilty. That's mind and body in opposition. We have to begin to recondition the body to a new mind. So change isn't hard. It's just that you've got to get the manual to understand how to begin to unlearn and relearn, to break the habit of the old self and reinvent the new self. The latest research in neuroplasticity tells us we're not hardwired to be a certain way for the rest of our lives. The latest research in epigenetics says we're not doomed by our genes, that in fact we're marvels of adaptability and change. So as a person started to contemplate and think about, who do I want to be when I open my eyes? What would it be like to be happy? What would it be like to live a new life? The frontal lobe is looking out into the landscape of the entire brain because it has connections to the entire neocortex, and it's got to resolve the problem. So it starts calling up different networks of neurons that are relevant to the question based on the knowledge the person learns or the experiences that they had, and it begins to seamlessly piece together this new understanding, and that's called intention. And so if you're reading a book about how to become more happy, or if you're reading a book on how to be a leader in your life, where you're studying the process, every time you learn something new, you add new connections to your brains and raw materials for you to imagine even more. The act of mentally rehearsing begins to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like it's already happened. Now, the brain is typically a record of the past, but the moment we install the neurological hardware, it becomes a map to the future. And you keep doing that, the hardware becomes a software program, which means you start thinking like a genius. You start acting like a happy person because there's no mystery there because you installed the circuits. And then these people didn't wait for their wealth or their health to feel gratitude and to feel empowered or to feel love, a love for life. They began to feel those emotions ahead of the experience, and their body, as the unconscious mind, doesn't know the difference between the experience and their life that creates the emotion, and their emotion that they're creating by thought alone. The body's believing it's living in the future, in the present moment, and the stronger the emotion that they felt, the more they're going to pay attention to the thoughts they're thinking, and now all of a sudden they're changing their biology from living in the past-present reality to living in the future-present reality. And I was so intrigued by this process that I went back to school to study neuroscience because it was the answer in the internal process of rehearsing and imagining.